Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. We are here this morning in docket number 2023-4-G, the annual review of purchase gas adjustment gas purchasing policies of Piedmont Natural Gas Company. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. With us virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin and Vice Chair Powers. And here present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner Justin Williams, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Carol Lee Williams, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. Let me recognize our staff counsel, Ms. Clausen, to read the docket.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, we are here today for the proceeding in docket number 2023-4G, which is the matter of the annual review of purchase gas adjustment and gas purchasing policies of Piedmont Natural Gas Company, Incorporated. This hearing has been scheduled for July 13th, 2023 at 10 a.m. I understand that the parties participating in this matter are present with their respective witnesses and are ready to proceed. Therefore, the docket is in order.
Thank you, Ms. Clausen. Let's take appearances from the party. Who's representing Piedmont Natural Gas?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Mindy McGrath from the law firm of Troutman, Pepper, Hamilton, Sanders. Here with me today is my colleague, Michael Peretz. We're appearing today on behalf of Piedmont Natural Gas.
Thank you, Ms. McGrath. Appreciate that. And the Office of Regulatory Staff?
Good morning, Chair Belser and members of the Commission. Donna Rainey and Ben Muschin appearing on behalf of ORS.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey. Are there any preliminary matters that need to come before the Commission before we begin? Mr. Muschin, I see you reaching for the microphone. Or Ms. McGrath, who wants to go?
I'll certainly defer to Ms. McGrath.
Ms. McGrath?
No, I was just trying to turn it off, actually. Thank you.
I like an honest answer, but you're still on, Ms. McGrath.
Madam Chair, just very briefly, as the Commission is aware, Piedmont and ORS executed a settlement agreement in this matter that was filed on July 11th. Set forth in the agreement, ORS determined that during the review period, Piedmont's gas purchasing policies and practices were reasonable and prudent, and that Piedmont properly adhered to the gas cost recovery provisions of its gas tariff and relevant Commission orders. The parties also agreed that the end of period balance for Piedmont's deferred gas cost account and Piedmont's hedging activity during the review period are appropriately reflected in Witness Tomlinson's testimony and exhibits and are attached as reflected in the attachment to the settlement agreement. So at this time, I would ask that the settlement agreement be marked for identification and entered into the record as the first hearing exhibit, and I do have copies available if the Commission would need those.
Thank you, Mr. Muschin. Any objection?
No, Madam Chair. Piedmont supports that motion.
Thank you. The settlement agreement with its Exhibit 1 will be marked for identification as hearing Exhibit number 1 and received into the evidence of this case. Anything further as preliminary matters? Okay. Ms. McGrath, are you ready to proceed with your witnesses? Your mic's not on. There you go.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yes, Madam Chair. At this time, Piedmont would like to call its witnesses Ms. Mary Beth Tomlinson, Mr. Todd Brees, and Mr. Jeffrey Patton to the stand.
Thank you.
And would it be appropriate to
Ms.
move?
McGrath, you move to wherever you're comfortable. I usually say that, and I apologize for not. Y'all may stay seated. If you stay seated, I need for you to talk into the microphone. If you prefer going to one of the podiums, wherever you're most comfortable. Does anybody have a copy of the settlement agreement that Ben's got? Before you begin, Mr. Muschin, you said you had copies of the settlement agreement.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me the layout of the exhibit attached to the settlement agreement that you have. Is it landscaped or portrait?
The one I have is landscape.
Landscaped is
And does it have the watermark on it?
no, ma'am.
Would you hand that up to the court reporter
Sure.
to use as the hearing exhibit? Because the copies I've printed off the DMS has the watermark through the numbers, and I'd like to be able to read the numbers.
and we certainly have plenty of copies available
How
for the
about hand
commissioners.
those up if you don't
Yes, ma'am.
mind? Sorry. That's one thing to consider as you prepare exhibits, is should be aware there's a watermark that gets placed on things that are filed on the DMS, and sometimes it's a little difficult to read what you file when the when the watermark goes through the numbers.
Is it, just so I'm clear, is it the watermark that on the side of the page? That
It is. It says
okay.
electronically filed.
Understood.
Or
Okay.
accepted for processing. It's what our system puts on.
Understood.
Is that the one you have? Mine, I have another one. I think they
No,
have
I
a
think-
watermark on it.
Is that a better copy, Madam Chair?
Or the- you have these?
I think she's right.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the watermark comes through on the testimony and exhibits as well. So
Right.
just
Okay.
something
Understood.
to consider.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. McGrath, I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you please proceed?
If you
We
all
need
would
to
ra-
swear the witnesses.
If you would raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, thank you. Ms. Tomlinson, we will begin with you. Can you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Mary Beth Tomlinson. My business address is 525 South Tryon Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am employed by Duke Energy Corporation as the manager of gas accounting for Piedmont Natural Gas Company. My responsibilities include recording the cost of gas on Piedmont's books, maintaining a proper match of revenues and cost of gas on Piedmont's income statements, verifying volumes and prices on all invoices related to the purchase and transportation of natural gas, and recording gas inventory accounts and deferred accounts.
And on June 1st, 2023, did you cause to be pre-filed in this docket direct testimony consisting of 3 pages and 2 exhibits marked MBT-1 and MBT-2?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any corrections to your pre-filed direct testimony or exhibits?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions today while you are under oath that are set forth in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, at this time, Piedmont would ask that Ms. Tomlinson's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that her exhibits marked MBT-2-1 and 2 be marked and entered into the record as a composite hearing exhibit, which I believe would be hearing exhibit number 2.
Ms. Tomlinson's pre-filed direct testimony filed on June the 1st will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. Ms. Tomlinson's pre-filed exhibits attached to that direct testimony marked MBT-1 and MBT-2 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 2, and any objection to admission? Hearing none, will be received into the record of this case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Tomlinson, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I have.
And can you please provide that for the Commission?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission.
I'm going to
Yes,
ask,
sir.
we have commissioners that are virtual. I just want to make sure they can hear you, so I'm going to ask you to speak a little
Okay.
louder.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to describe Piedmont's gas cost and hedging plan accounting data and end-of-period balances for the review period in the proceeding, which is April 1st, 2022 through March 31st, 2023. Pursuant to prior Commission directives, Piedmont maintains a gas cost deferred account in which it records on a monthly basis its gas cost expenses, amounts of gas cost recovered, and deferrals. For this review period, Piedmont's end-of-period balance in the purchased gas deferred account was an overcollection of $2,568,747.70. The ORS has conducted an audit of the entries to Piedmont's gas cost deferred account and the hedging deferred account relevant to the review period in this proceeding. Summaries of the monthly activity in these accounts are attached to my testimony respectively as Exhibit MBT-1 and Exhibit MBT-2. No issues were discovered in the ORS audit of Piedmont's gas cost deferred account or hedging account. Accordingly, shortly before the hearing in this matter, the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff and Piedmont entered into a settlement agreement in this docket. On July 12, 2023, I filed settlement testimony that discusses and offers support of the settlement agreement. Piedmont believes that the Commission's approval of the settlement agreement is in the interest of Piedmont and in the public interest, and that it addresses the concerns of the using and consuming public while preserving the financial integrity of Piedmont. Accordingly, Piedmont respectfully requests that the Commission approve the settlement agreement as filed. This concludes my summary of my direct and settlement testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tomlinson.
Ms. McGrath, I don't think we've put in the settlement testimony. Would you like to offer that into the record? I think we got a little bit ahead there.
I think that would be a wonderful idea, Madam Chair. At this time, Piedmont would also...
Can you lay the foundation, please?
Yes. Ms. Tomlinson, on July 12th, 2023, did you file settlement testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
And did you prepare and cause that testimony to be prepared?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any corrections to the settlement testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions today under oath, would your responses be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, at this time, Piedmont would like to move the settlement testimony into the record.
Ms. Tomlinson, settlement testimony filed on July 12th will be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Brees, moving on to you. Would you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Todd Brees, and my business address is 4720 Piedmont Road Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28210.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy Corporation as the manager of natural gas trading and optimization for Piedmont Natural Gas Company.
And are you the same Todd Brees who pre-filed direct testimony in this proceeding on June 1st, 2023, consisting of 19 pages?
Yes.
And was that testimony prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes, it was.
Do you have any corrections you need to make to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No.
And if I asked you the same questions today under oath, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, at this time, Piedmont would ask that the pre-filed direct testimony of Todd Brees be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Todd Brees that was filed on June 1st will be accepted into the record as if given orally from the stand. And Mr. Brees, I'm going to ask that you talk into that microphone a little more directly, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Brees, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes.
And can you please provide that for the Commission?
Yes, I will. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. I filed direct testimony in this proceeding on June 1st, 2023. My testimony describes Piedmont's gas purchasing policies and the company's hedging activities during the review period, which in this proceeding is April 1st, 2022 through March 31st, 2023. During the review period, Piedmont continued its use of a best cost approach to purchasing gas. This approach involves 5 components: the price of gas, the security of gas supply, the flexibility of gas supply, gas deliverability, and supplier relationships. Each of these factors is discussed in detail in my testimony. Collectively, these components establish a standard for purchasing gas that Piedmont has used successfully for many years and which has been reviewed and found prudent on all occasions in South Carolina and in the other state jurisdictions in which Piedmont operates. Most of Piedmont's primary gas supplies are purchased under arrangements that are standard in the industry and which involve the payment of reservation fees for firm supplies priced at market-based indices. However, Piedmont also purchases short-term supplies in the spot market at market-based prices when necessary to meet customers' needs during non-critical periods. My testimony describes the various new supply arrangements the company entered into during the review period and explains the company's position regarding the current U.S. supply situation. My testimony also discusses the steps the company has taken to manage the cost of gas, such as utilizing the company's hedging plan as an insurance policy to reduce gas cost volatility to its customers. Piedmont's hedging activities for the review period in this proceeding resulted in a net economic benefit to customers of approximately 48 cents per month. In summary, my testimony supports the conclusion that Piedmont's review period gas costs were prudently incurred and that the company managed its hedging program in compliance with prior commission orders. Thank you.
And Mr. Patton, please state your name and business address for the record.
My name is Jeffrey Patton. My business address is 4720 Piedmont Road Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28210.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy Corporation and manage pipeline services on behalf of Piedmont Natural Gas Company.
And on June 1st, 2023, did you cause to be filed in this docket pre-filed direct testimony consisting of 18 pages and 13 exhibits marked JCP-1A through JCP-8?
Yes, that's correct.
And are there any corrections you need to make to your pre-filed direct testimony or exhibits?
No.
And if I were to ask you the same questions today under oath as are set forth in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, at this time, Piedmont would ask that Mr. Patton's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that his exhibits marked JCP-1A through JCP-8 be marked and entered into the record as a composite hearing exhibit.
Mr. Patton's pre-filed direct testimony that was filed on June the 1st will be received into the record as if given orally from the stand. Mr. Patton's pre-filed direct exhibits 1A through 8 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit 3. Any objection? Hearing none, will be received into the record of this case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Patton, did you prepare a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I did.
Can you please provide that for the Commission?
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to present the current and projected market requirements of Piedmont's South Carolina customers during the review period of April 1, 2022 through March 31st, 2023. In this proceeding, and the capacity acquisition policies and practices the company employs to serve Piedmont's South Carolina customers. My testimony presents the inputs and the calculations utilized by the company to determine the design day needs of its system and how we as a company are prepared to meet projected firm customer requirements. In particular, my testimony supports the company's review and adoption of the third-party design day demand and design winter load duration curve study conducted by Marquette Energy Analytics. My testimony and supporting exhibits provide an overview of the calculations and methodology in Marquette's design day study and demonstrate that the company has and will continue to provide safe and reliable service to its firm customer base during design day conditions by utilizing Marquette's study. I explained that the company believes that adopting Marquette's study provides an improvement to its planning processes. My testimony also discussed how Piedmont utilizes the best cost methodology to acquire incremental capacity to meet projected growth and discusses how Piedmont plans to supply its estimated future growth requirements during the next 5 years. I note that Piedmont secured additional incremental firm pipeline service along 2 transportation paths on Transco as part of Transco's Southside Reliability Enhancement Project, which is on target to be placed into service on December 1st, 2024. Finally, I also described the efforts undertaken by Piedmont at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, commonly referred to as FERC, to ensure that Piedmont's interstate transportation and storage services are reasonably priced. This concludes the summary of my direct testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Madam Chair, Piedmont's witnesses are available for Commissioner questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. McGrath.
Thank you.
Office of Regulatory Staff?
No questions.
Commissioners, questions for these witnesses? Commissioner Carolee Williams?
Thank you, Chair Belzer.
You're looking at me. Oh, I didn't see your light. I couldn't see the light on your microphone, that's why.
Okay. And I just want to say thank you to Piedmont and ORS for providing us with the settlement agreement more than 24 hours in advance, more than 2 hours in advance. It's just really appreciate the work that it took for you all to do that for us. That said, in my third year of doing this, I learn every time, so I do have questions, but it's really to kind of build on better understanding in the future. So they are organized kind of by your testimony. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Breeze. Would you remind me about what a city gate is? And I'm looking at page 5 of your testimony and the gas deliverability and
Yes, the city gate would be the meter off of a interstate pipeline that serves our distribution. So basically all the gas that we're taking off of Transco to come into South Carolina to serve the customers are coming in off multiple city gates along that Transco interstate pipeline. And then the volumes would flow through the city gate and into our distribution system. So that's how they get nominated and scheduled on the pipeline, and so that we can see the measurement of the volumes that go through there.
how'd they become called city gates?
That I do not know.
Okay. It's a mental conundrum for me because I think very literally.
Mhm.
And swing service. That's from page 11. What is swing service?
Yes, so the ability to swing on a particular contract, supply contract, would be that we have the option to call on a flexible volume from 0 up to some maximum daily quantity of decatherms, maybe 20,000 decatherms a day. And we would have the ability to call on from that supplier somewhere in that range. So we have the ability to swing. So it would be considered a swing supply contract.
Okay. When on page 15 you talk about the secondary market credits and this year versus last year, which is substantial, is there any way to translate that into what that means to a typical customer?
Yes, the 23 million in secondary marketing credits is equivalent to about $12 savings per month per customer.
That's substantial.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And thinking about the hedging the hedging plan, do you have any insight in where that's likely to take you all in terms of impact to customers in future years? In next year, I don't mean any more than that.
Yes, so obviously this year we did have a net economic benefit of about $930,000 or 48 cents per month per customer. And so we don't really have a forecast on if there will be an economic benefit, because typically there's a net cost associated with the hedging plan as we view it as a low-cost insurance policy. This year just happens to be different, where we did have some hedges that expired in the money, and those proceeds from those hedges expiring the money outweighed the total cost of the hedging plan, so the customers did get that economic benefit. But we don't really have a forecast of when hedges will be triggered, and then we'll have a hedge out there for 12, possibly 12 months in horizon, and then what the market will do in those 12 months as to whether or not it will expire, in the money or out of the money.
Okay. And on your last page, you talk about the cost of the hedging plan is relatively low. Is there anywhere where you identify, or one of you identifies, what the administrative cost is?
That may be in one of Mary Beth's exhibits.
So we pay fees, consultant fees, we paid $4,728 over the review period.
$4,728 over
The
12
review
months.
period, yes, ma'am.
Well, I think that answers a question I have for you, and so I'm going to transfer my questions there. I think on that last page, I wanted to ask if that really were hundreds of dollars, and or whether, let's see, not last page. Yep, that was it. Okay. So consultant fees
Correct.
for the hedging is like $394,
Yes, per
$788
month. Correct.
dollars.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That may be all the questions I have for you.
Okay.
Thank you. And Mr. Patton. Yes. I think I understand, but I would appreciate your looking at your exhibit JCP 1A. Does that graph show over the entire winter what source you use first? And will you describe that graph for me?
Sure.
Thank you.
So JCP Exhibit 1A is the load duration curve. It is the planning load duration curve. So what we do is we look at the anticipated winter load, and we have the hourly daily load across the winter, and we sort from highest to lowest. So that line that goes from the top left to the bottom right is the projected load for those days across the winter. You can see on the far left of the graph, we're projecting very few days at really high load, and then it kind of drops off quickly from there on across the page, where you have typical less extreme weather during the winter period. And so the shaded regions, the bars across, represent the supply that we have through transportation and storage access. And those two top, I would call almost rectangles, the green and almost orange, those represent the LNG supply that we have access to serve those peak days. And so these assets are not stacked up as far as how we might serve on a particular day, but it represents the ability to meet those high demand days across a duration. Whereas you can see towards the bottom, our transportation capacity with Transco and upstreams with Columbia, it goes across the whole winter. Whereas although we can use our LNG, on any given day, but we are projecting for these purposes that we would use the maximum withdrawal amount across either 5 or 10 days to meet that peak need that we see there on the left-hand side of the graph.
So peak days are in the 1 to 10-ish range on the bottom of the graph.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I found some of the discussion about population growth interesting. I think it was in your testimony, like 2.2% a year for South Carolina.
Well, we forecast, and I have exhibits that illustrate in the past net customer growth for that we show year over year and what we're projecting in the future. And it's mainly driven by economic development, mostly new residential connections, spurring that growth of customers.
So it sounds like from that answer, my 2.2% memory is false. I do see North Carolina and South Carolina together on your JCP 55B, and those numbers are a little less than 2.
Yeah,
That-
that's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the historical growth up until 2023 of year over year net customer additions, and then the projected increase for Piedmont's total North Carolina and South Carolina territories.
Okay. I think going back to 4A, you talk about baseload growth, which is actually shrinkage, and heat load growth, which is actually shrinkage. And I'm wondering, with the population growth and the customer growth, how those two things relate. Maybe it's not what
Sure.
I'm thinking growth means and shrinkage means.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think probably the best way to talk about that is probably to go to exhibit. Let's go to exhibit 5C. So if you go to exhibit 5C and you look across the top, and it's probably very hard to see, there at the top of the bar, there's a Carolina demand net growth rate across the top, and there's a smaller percentage there. So if you'll see above 23, 24, it's roughly 0.3%.
Okay.
And then for 24, 25, 0.475%. That is the forecasted demand growth that we're expecting for our peak design day needs. Whereas on the other exhibits, we showed customer growth, which was, say, average around 1.6, 1.7%. And so that difference is what we're seeing based on the updated analysis that was provided by Marquette Energy and Analytics. The trend of the data that we're seeing is over time, both we call it shrinkage from on a base load perspective, as well as the use per heating degree day on a customer basis. So efficiencies, customer behavior is translating to, it's not a direct correlation of the customer growth to demand growth. And that difference between the 1.7 roughly and these percentages that I mentioned on 5C kind of illustrates the difference between what demand we project to be growing for design day versus customer growth.
That's what I thought, and thank you for taking me there, or
Sure.
wherever the answer would have taken us.
Sure.
I may have to get back to you. I can't figure out the question on that page, and we covered it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Caston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
On the modeling, I think it was your testimony, Mr. Patton, on page 7, you talk about MEA's design day methodology. Looking at, I guess, based on an ensemble of multiple linear regression models, incorporating several models, including wind.
That's right.
Was that incorporation or thought brought about specifically from experience of Winter Storm Elliott, or had Piedmont been thinking about that before Winter Storm Elliott?
Oh, we had before Winter Storm Elliott. We looked at our internal process that was based on a historically cold event, January 21st, 1985, that had a certain temperature with average for that day. And did not include wind. And as we were doing a review of our design day methodologies and working with Marquette, it was apparent from Marquette's analysis that wind does have a significant impact on the conditions. If it's really windy, it feels colder, there's an impact. And so capturing that wind incorporation using Marquette Energy Analytics, we had done a review, and in July of 2022, based on that analysis, made the transition to Marquette, which is a forecast that includes the wind. So it was before Winter Storm Elliott.
Makes you look like a genius now, doesn't it? So in essence, that's basically considering wind chill.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming that model runs those various scenarios at this temperature with this wind speed, this range, and that's what you do.
That's right.
Good. Seems like good. One final question. I guess relative to releasing capacity, when P&G releases capacity, are the contracts such that if there is a sale, the customer still pays the underlying contract, but gets the benefit of the profit? Is that the way that works?
As far as as far as the accounting refer to, Ms.
I don't know if that's you.
But when a contract is released, either seasonally or annually, or we get those dollars that offset the initial cost of the contracted capacity that we would have already paid. So it's an offset.
Okay.
Yeah, I can take this as well, add a little bit. There's multiple types of capacity releases. So if we were going to do a capacity release under an asset management agreement, then that would be at zero rate. So yes, the customers then would still be paying that reservation fee for the pipeline capacity, but we still maintain the transportation rights under the asset management agreement. So we just have an asset manager who is delivering our volumes on our capacity on the days that we need it. So, and they're paying us for that asset management agreement. And so then that fee would help reduce the cost of the overall transportation assets. Now, if we're just doing a third-party capacity release where we're giving up our transportation rights on that capacity, then there's going to be some kind of market rate associated with that. Sometimes it's lower than what the rate of the capacity is that we might have, but there's lots of times, especially in the winter, where it'll be above that rate that we're paying for that capacity. So then the customers are getting that additional benefit because the third-party capacity release is worth more than what the capacity was we were originally paying under our long-term contracts.
Okay. Thank you very much. No more questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, further, Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. Appreciate you all being here this morning. My questions are not organized, and I'm not going to direct them at any one particular person, so anybody feel comfortable, just jump in. There's been a little bit of talk about Winter Storm Elliott, and it seems to me from what I've read in the testimony that it was almost a non-event for Piedmont. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say so. We didn't have any force majeure supply cuts. We didn't have any issues with supply deliverability. It was extremely cold during that holiday weekend, but we did not have any supply impacts for South Carolina customers.
And I think I understand that no customers were interrupted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if customers had been interrupted, it would have primarily been the large industrial customers that have those sort of contracts. That would happen with them first. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And maybe because it was around Christmas time, they were not operating as strongly as they would have been a week or two ahead of time. Could that have played into why there were not interruptions to those customers, do you think?
Well, I would say from a planning perspective, the events of Winter Storm Elliott, our system performed as designed, and the fact that it did come over a weekend, we would recognize that had it come on a weekday or non-holiday, load would have been higher. But from a measurement standpoint, our load on Winter Storm Elliott, did not approach design day conditions. It was probably 60 or 70% roughly, and so it's even if it had during a weekday, it's hard to say, but most likely would not have any interruptions, of calling interruptible customers.
Okay. And so you didn't have any equipment that froze, or that's really not that common, I don't think, in the natural gas business, but I guess it can happen.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any equipment issues. Like I said, everything performed as designed, so worked in good shape.
Okay, and you mentioned a minute ago design day, demand day. Can you help me understand the difference between design day and demand day?
Well, I probably maybe misspoke, but I was referring to, on a design day demand is what we plan for that peak day, and versus the demand on any given day, or the demand that we saw on for Winter Storm Elliott.
Okay, but so then what is the difference between design day and demand day, or they just work together?
Well, so design day is what we plan for the extreme cold extreme cold conditions to meet that load, and for as it's shown in the exhibits in my testimony, we plan for a winter temperature that's wind adjusted about 6.7 degrees for our overall service territory. And on any given day, there's certain temperatures and conditions that drive the demand, and so that demand may or may not approach design day conditions. But that's the delineations for a design day is kind of where we drive that stake in the ground. Where we say we need to be prepared for this type of weather event.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about hedging. So I saw some information in there that this has been going on since I suppose the early 2000s. Started out as a test, or it's probably not the right word, but experimental, and then I suppose it's no longer an experimental program, right? It's the program, and is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, and I saw some cumulative numbers, and I saw one place it was like 36 million. And I saw somewhere else it was much, much closer to $40 million over the whole period, which I think is like 15 years. Is that correct?
I believe that's in ORS's testimony, and I think that was long before my time. It hasn't been that high since I've been doing it, and that's been 8 years.
Well, I mean, I'm just talking about the cumulative cost from the beginning. I mean, it's like you said.
I'm assuming their numbers are right, so I would say yes, that's correct.
Okay. And there was some mention of this is, for the customer's benefit, and that it performed well and is cost effective and that kind of a thing. So what's the standard? What do you measure against to make that determination?
The outside consultant that we use that helped design the hedging plan as it works now with the way the prices trigger, they do an annual survey of their customers, and all of our parameters with our hedging plan are in line with equally situated LDC's customers of theirs. And so we feel like it's we don't weigh it as if we have a net economic benefit that it's worked, because it functions as a low-cost insurance policy. You pay the premium, which is the cost of the hedging plan, and you kind of hope you never have to use it. And if that's the case, then pricing would remain low, and our customers would benefit from that. Now, when it comes into play is when prices do spike and we have hedges in place, and then they settle in the money, and you get that proceeds that helps reduce the cost of the hedging plan or helps reduce the cost of the customer's rates. So yes, we do feel that it's been effective the way that we currently have it set up.
And do you hedge in other states as well?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And there was some discussion of off-system sales and releases and that kind of a thing. So when those occur, how do they get allocated to South Carolina? How do you know it's related to South Carolina?
We go ahead and we have the demand allocation that comes from the North Carolina rate cases that was agreed upon by South Carolina. And so currently, I believe it's 14.61% goes to South Carolina and the rest goes to North Carolina.
Okay. And so you talked about the Marquette Energy Analytics,
Right.
and moving to their design, I guess you might say, their program. Is that geared towards gas utilities, or is that something they work with electrics and others, or do you know?
That's a good question. So Marquette Energy Analytics started out of Marquette University. Piedmont has been using MEA, as we refer to them, for approximately maybe 20 years for the forecasting from an operational standpoint of the next upcoming week from a demand perspective. And so Marquette does forecast primarily for LDCs, natural gas companies. They serve probably approximately 20% of the load in the United States. So they're been in the business a while. With that relationship that we have with them, we approached them about doing the design day type modeling. And so after having discussions with them and then performing a design day demand study and analysis, after reviewing that, we felt like it was an improvement, and we moved to that their methodology, or using them and their methodology and adopting that from design day demand. I don't think that Marquette really focuses more on anything on the electric side, but they're mainly for natural gas distribution companies forecasting gas demand.
Okay. And you mentioned the Transco South Side reliability enhancement. It's about a year or so away from. Can you describe that a little bit? What's that all about?
Sure. So, the Southside Reliability Enhancement Project is a project that Piedmont subscribed to. It has two distinct paths. One path is called the South Virginia Lateral Path that comes across a little bit in Virginia, around the Virginia-North Carolina border. And that path is 160,000 a day of firm capacity from Station 165 over to deliveries in eastern North Carolina, particularly Pleasant Hill and Ahoskie, City Gate locations that we have. The other path is from our Pine Needle, the storage facility that we've contracted with Transco, Pine Needle LNG, with delivery to Piedmont City Gate at Iredell. And so the purpose of those two paths, the first path being the South Virginia Lateral, is essentially kind of a replacement of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. It delivers capacity into eastern North Carolina, it delivers supply into eastern North Carolina to meet growth in that direction, in that area, as well as the Pine Needle path is on the main line, and we proactively looking ahead at the growing constraints on Transco, wanted to have a firm transportation path from our Pine Needle LNG to our City Gate on Iredell. And that path lines up with our capacity rights of 263,400 decatherms a day. And so right now that project is going through the permitting process. It is currently, we're waiting for a FERC approval of their certificate. And we anticipate that in around the August timeframe. And then with that timeline, Transco would propose to start construction in January of next year to be in service by the end of the year. That particular project does not have any pipeline looping. It's all just compression, electric compression additions. And so, the environmental impacts are minimum going along existing right-of-ways. So we're hopeful that it does get approved in the next coming months.
And speaking of that approval, the recent legislation that theoretically helped the Mountain Valley Pipeline, does it have any impact on this expansion, or is that just pretty much related to Mountain Valley Pipeline?
Yeah, so our expansion with Transco, the SRE project, is not dependent upon Mountain Valley Pipeline's completion. It's a separate project.
Right, but I was thinking more in terms of the permitting process. It theoretically was helping the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the recent legislation.
No, it's not not involved in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. It's not a part of that legislation to help the pipeline permitting. But it is, it is pending at FERC right now, and we're hopeful it'll be approved very soon.
I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, further questions for the panel?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Irvin?
thank you. Let me thank you all for being with us today. I'd like to just follow up on your hedging program. How much did you save customers as a result of the hedging program during the review period?
During the review period, the savings was around $930,000, which equates to about 48 cents per customer per month.
And for total savings, did I hear about $12?
The $12 per month, that was the savings that came from the secondary marketing margins. So there was about $23 million in secondary marketing margin that went to the South Carolina customers, and that equates to about $12 savings per month. So that's not, I guess, part of our hedging program, but it does act as kind of a natural hedge, with my group being able to optimize the unused assets and recover those secondary marketing margin.
Very good. Would you explain just in a little more detail what secondary market, how that works? Because I'm familiar with the hedging program, but this is the first time I've heard about that.
Yes, so the secondary marketing margin encompasses anytime we're making an off-system sale, a capacity release, an asset management agreement. All of the proceeds that come from those transactions go into the secondary marketing margin. And so typically the off-system sales and third-party capacity release, we're optimizing those unused assets when they're not being needed by our customers. And so we're trying to recover the cost of those transportation and storage assets that we pay. And so that is the secondary marketing margin that we're recovering and helping to reduce the customer's costs.
So there are two separate programs that help reduce customer cost. Two separate ways, I suppose.
Yes, the hedging plan did help reduce the cost this year, but that's not typical for every year. If there was a year where we had some hedges that did not expire in the money, then there's going to be a sunk cost of the hedging program. But as we described, that it's kind of a low-cost insurance policy. It's a basic hedging plan, just buying call options, and since the cost is relatively low, it usually isn't costing the customers too much to have that hedging plan to mitigate the risk of a price spike.
And the administrative cost for the hedging program was, for the period under review, was $4,000 and change. Is that about what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for taking your customers, taking care of your customers in that way. I wish all investor-owned utilities would do that, because it shows that you do care about your customers, and I think that's a great attribute. And Piedmont's a well-run company, and I congratulate you on the successes that you've had during the period, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, further questions? Commissioner Carolyn Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Patton, I found the words for the last question I had for you. It's on 4C, and you might want to look at it, because I'm really asking on line 46 what I'm looking at in yellow. What are...
Okay, sure. So on exhibit JCP 4C line, you're looking at line 46?
Correct, under
Okay.
total capacity.
Sure. So that line is basically the difference between line 8, total firm sales demand, and line 45, which is total capacity. So, for example, for the winter 22-23, we're showing a total capacity of 1,679,055 decatherms, whereas our firm demand is 1,522,216. So that difference being shown on line 46 of roughly 156,000 and change, and that difference being positive shows that for on a design day basis, we have capacity to meet our projected firm sales demand on a design day. So with that number being positive, we have the ability to meet that, and we have we call that I guess in the industry a long position, where we have a little bit of a long position of capacity versus projected demand. And if the number were negative, it would be a short position where we would have to make arrangements to contract for some bridging products for supply to meet that shortfall.
And I really appreciate that you look out to 2026 to 27 in the chart. And I recognize that you're looking out now in terms of what you have. What I see is a lessening amount of coverage between the demand and the capacity. Would you speak a little bit to kind of how that will evolve in time?
Sure. So on a long-term planning basis, we look out to see how that, say, for example, that length is shrinking or becoming less, where at some point, we would find it prudent to go ahead and make arrangements to contract for additional transportation or storage capacity to meet that projected shortfall, recognizing that, if a interstate pipeline would have to make an expansion project, some kind of a new project to meet that demand, it would take us several years of planning, permitting, and constructing. So you're looking ahead several years in order to make those decisions based on anticipated need for that additional capacity. And so we look at that over time and make determination. At what point do we feel like we need to make a contracting decision to cover a projected shortfall?
I look forward to seeing how you do it, and appreciate the planning ahead. Thank you for the answer and the explanation. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, anything further?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. I have one more question, and this relates to the LNG storage facilities. There was some mention that improvements or enhancements are in progress or have been made. What's going on with the LNG storage and enhancements, improvements?
Well, I think looking back at my testimony, our most recent addition for LNG was the Robinson LNG plant that came in service of August 2021. So that brought an additional 200,000 a day decatherms of additional supply to be the ability to call on that supply. We also had some increases, I believe, in our Bentonville facility due to the upgrades. I can't recall at this time, but just to the ability to increase the output on a daily basis from that facility. Other than that, we feel pretty good about our LNG portfolio for our system. And
you have some company-owned LNG facilities, and then you, I guess, contract for a share in others. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. If we'll go to exhibit, for example, exhibit 5C down at the bottom, starting on lines 38 through 42, we show LNG designated by Piedmont-owned assets of Huntersville, Bentonville, as well as Robinson. And then we have contracted LNG with Transco for Pine Needle, and then the LNG service, LNG rate schedule A, the Transco. So we do have owned and as well as contracted LNG capacity rights.
And whether it's owned or contracted, that's for Piedmont use and it's not going for electric generation or something else. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's for Piedmont.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, anything further? Ms. McGrath, any redirect?
Madam Chair, no redirect.
Thank you.
This concludes.
Ladies and
Piedmont's-
gentlemen, thank you for your testimony today. You may stand down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. McGrath, I think you just said that completed your case?
Yes, this concludes
Okay.
Piedmont's case.
I
Thank you.
I spoke over you. I apologize.
No worries.
Ms. Rainey or Mr. Mustian?
Madam Chair, ORS calls Ms. Radley and Mr. Hyatt to the stand.
Thank you. Madam Court Reporter, I'll ask you to swear the witnesses, please.
If you would raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Ms. Radley, I'll start off with you. Ms. Radley, please state your full name for the record.
My name is Courtney Radley.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as a senior auditor.
Ms. Radley, are you the same Courtney D. Radley who pre-filed 10 pages of direct testimony in this docket on June 22nd, 2023?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any edits or changes to that testimony?
No, I do not.
If I ask you the same questions as those posed in your direct testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, ORS moves that Ms. Radley's 10 pages of pre-filed direct testimony be marked and entered into the record as the next hearing exhibit. As if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Radley's pre-filed direct testimony filed on June 22nd will be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you. And Ms. Radley, did you also pre-file 3 exhibits with your direct testimony marked as CDR1 through CDR3?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or edits to your exhibits at this time?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, ORS moves that Ms. Radley's pre-filed exhibits CDR1 through CDR3 be marked as the next composite exhibit.
Ms. Radley's pre-filed exhibits CDR1 through CDR3 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit 4. Any objection to admission? Hearing none, will be admitted as hearing exhibit 4.
And Ms. Radley, did you also prepare a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I did.
Would you please share that with the Commission at this time?
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. The purpose of my testimony is to set forth the findings resulting from ORS's examination of the company's purchased gas deferred account, storage inventory activity, and hedging account activity for the period April 1st, 2022 through March 31st, 2023. ORS has included the results of our examination in Exhibits CDR1 through CDR3. Exhibit CDR1 presents, for each month, the components which contribute to the company's over or under collection in the purchased gas deferred account for the review period. Exhibit CDR2 summarizes the company's gas storage inventory activity during the review period. Exhibit CDR3 details the results of the company's hedging activity for the review period, as well as the cumulative loss since the inception of the program. Based on our examination, it is the opinion of ORS that the over-collection balance in Piedmont's purchased gas deferred account on March 31st, 2023 of $568,747.70, as shown on Company Witness Tomlinson's Exhibit MBT1, is accurately stated. Subsequent to the filing of my direct testimony, a settlement agreement was entered into between the company and ORS in this proceeding. The settlement agreement is offered as a fair, reasonable, and full resolution of the parties' issues in this proceeding. Further, ORS believes that the settlement agreement is in the public interest of South Carolina and respectfully requests that the Commission approve the settlement agreement as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Radley. Mr. Hyatt, would you please state your full name for the record?
Donald Shane Hyatt.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the Office of Regulatory Staff as a regulatory analyst.
Are you the same Donald Shane Hyatt who pre-filed 10 pages of direct testimony in this docket on June 22nd, 2023?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any edits or changes to your testimony at this time?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions posing your pre-filed testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, I move that Mr. Hyatt's 10 pages of pre-filed direct testimony be marked and be read into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Hyatt's pre-filed direct testimony filed on June 22nd will be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you. And Mr. Hyatt, did you prepare a summary of your testimony today?
I did.
Please present your summary at this time.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to present ORS's findings and recommendations regarding the review and examination of Piedmont Natural Gas Company during the review period. First, ORS found the company's natural gas purchasing policies to be reasonable. Second, ORS found that Piedmont managed its hedging program in compliance with the prior Commission orders. Third, ORS determined Piedmont adhered to its Commission-approved gas cost recovery mechanism tariff. Fourth, ORS found that the company is prepared to meet its obligations for the upcoming winter's projected firm customers' requirements. And fifth, ORS reviewed the changes to the firm design day and found the changes to the design day to be reasonable. Subsequent to my filing of my direct testimony, a settlement agreement was entered into between the company and ORS in this proceeding. The settlement agreement is offered as a fair, reasonable, and full resolution of the parties' issues in this proceeding. Further, ORS believes that the settlement agreement is in the public interest of South Carolina and respectfully requests that the Commission approve the settlement agreement as presented. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Ms. Radley and Mr. Hyatt. Please answer Commission questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey. Ms. McGrath, just for the record, any questions? Any cross? None. Commissioners, questions for this panel? Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
So I wanted to ask a little bit about the hedging and the long-term impact. I think I saw a number that the cumulative cost was $36 million, and then another number that was closer to $40 million. And this is over a period of approximately 15 years that the program's been in place. So if you take that approximately $40 million and you divide that by the 15 years, then you're coming to about $2.6 million a year cost on average for the hedging program. Does that sound about right?
Well, there was a $26 million loss in 2009, I do believe, subject to check, which made up the bulk of the loss, but it does lose more than it gains. I think there were 3 years that there has been a gain.
Okay. So 3 out of 15 years, there's been a gain or a benefit. But again, overall, it costs money, and that gets added to customer bills. Is that correct?
Correct. It's more of a insurance policy for volatility than a beat the market kind of program.
And do you think that it does serve that purpose of the reducing the volatility for customers?
I do believe so, considering it when the market really skyrocketed over the last couple of years, there was the gain, which means that the hedging program reduced the volatility during that time period.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Justin Williams.
Good morning, ma'am, sir. You've heard our questions about hedging and probably understand we have somewhat of an interest in how beneficial such a program is or has the potential to be to ratepayers. Understanding the answers you provided, I just want to go a little bit further. Is there any way for you to develop an analysis to compare impact on ratepayers by way of increased costs and volatility without a hedging program as compared to implementing a hedging program? And let me tell you why I asked that question. I understand that 3 out of the 15 years there was a gain, and I understand that overall there's a loss, even though there's protection against volatility. But what I'm not quite clear on is even understanding the losses and the gains. I don't know if we've been given information that allows us to directly compare the monthly bill or yearly bill with a hedging program over the past 15 years and then without a hedging program. Is it possible to do that, or am I asking too much?
My review in this particular case focused on them adhering to the commission-approved program as it is right now. As far as your question, I believe if you take the total dollar, because the total dollar gain, I think Mr. Bree said resulted in 14 cents per customer per month. So if you were looking at a loss for each year, that if you remove that loss, then the total amount per month per customer would be what would be the difference. Is what I would assume. But I don't think that kind of analysis wasn't part of my review for this.
I appreciate that. Sure. And quite frankly, I don't even know if such analysis exists, but it would be helpful because it's hard for me to determine the true benefit over time without comparing the impact on ratepayer bills, impact compared to, and I define impact as more so than anything, the increase in volatility and increase in the monthly bill compared to not having to deal with that. Am I making sense?
Well,
this is a very practical, basic question.
I think it's kind of like, when you buy car insurance, you're paying a monthly bill for car insurance with the hope that you never have to use it, because that means you had an accident or something happened to your car. But when you do have to use it, it's really great that you had it. So I think in a hedging program, you're paying a price for most years, and then when there is a market swing, then you get a benefit from it when there's something that spikes as high as we've seen the last year and a half or so.
Thank you for going there. That helps me understand the concept in practice a little bit better. And I like using examples and analogies. When you talk about car insurance, I went on a family trip several years ago with my grandparents to see my grandmother's oldest cousin. And we were hit. We drove a rental car. For whatever reason, I got the insurance. And we were hit by a driver. And our lives were made significantly easier by way of getting a new car. It's almost as if the accident didn't happen, the way the rental company responded to notice of the accident because I had the insurance compared to not having it, right, which made me feel that it's worth getting the insurance every time, because especially when traveling with elderly people, because just in case.
Right.
And I wasn't so much concerned with the benefit of the insurance in terms of what I gained. I was more concerned with being protected from what I could potentially lose, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So when I hear you speaking gains and losses, I understand that from market terminology, but I'm not really sure if that translates in terms of ratepayer impact. Using myself as an example, if I were a ratepayer in Piedmont's territory, which I'm not sure if I'd be interested in a gain as much as I'm interested in not paying exceptionally more than I normally pay, like a sharp spike. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. So is that what the hedging program is using my layman's explanation? Is it more protection than anything else?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of it's a protection against those high spikes.
Okay. And so the cost or the losses are spread out over time, right?
Right.
Okay. So is it fair to say in terms of impact, whatever losses are incurred is not as if the impact on that ratepayer bill is going to come at one time?
Especially because the gas company has the gas cost recovery mechanism that they can adjust monthly. So in this type of scenario, it's not going to happen all at once.
Okay. So let's say we lived in a world without a hedging program, okay, and we experienced high market volatility. The risk to the ratepayer by way of monthly impact, monthly increase on the bill could be much more, or would be much more than whatever they would be paying monthly for a hedging program. Is that a fair or accurate statement?
Again, it depends on the hedging program. Every company would have different programs in place, I would assume, depending on their customer base, the type of program they're able to set up, their relationships for making purchases. So for Piedmont in particular, the answer is yes. The costs are typically lower than what could happen if the customers had to go through a major spike. It keeps the prices level. So if there's a major dip, you're not seeing the same benefit. But if there's a major spike, you are seeing a benefit.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, I don't want to leave you out. I don't know if you have anything to add or not. I know my questions are not traditional, maybe, but just wanted to flesh that issue out. I'd love to hear any commentary you may have.
I don't think I have anything addition to add to Mr. Hyatt.
All right. Thank you for indulging me, sir. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Carolee Williams?
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Good to see you all this morning, and I'm going to follow up on that question and kind of drill down a little bit more to 2009, because that's when there was a loss of $26 million.
Yes, 2009.
And I think I know the answer to this question, but do we know what that cost would have been if the hedging program had not been there for that particular year? Do we have an estimate?
I do not know.
Okay. What was happening in 2009, and is there any way to compare what was happening that produced that loss as compared to what we experienced over the past couple of years, where there ended up being a benefit to the customer?
So I was just coming out of college and completely unaware of what was happening in the.
I understand. I think the questions are good for the record and just for all of us thinking collectively about this.
I do know the program has made a lot of changes since 2009. They've reduced sort of the horizon from 24 months to 12 months. They've reduced the percentage of the amount hedged. And then instead of having firm direct contracts that have to be paid, I think they have a more flexible system of call options now. So there have been changes to the program. I don't know what exactly drove that high price.
Okay. And Ms. Radley, I do have a couple of questions for you. On the secondary market sharing discussion, it was interesting to see the split of 75% of the margins from off-system sales was credited and 25% was retained by the customer and by the company. And I saw it in your testimony. I didn't see it in Piedmont's, and so you're getting their question. Can you tell me anything about the 75% and 25% split? Did we approve that at some point? Does that make sense? Is that an accounting standard?
I believe that was approved in a commission order. The 25% that goes to the company gives them an incentive to sell when they do have that excess capacity. And then you also benefit the customers because they're getting 75%.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad I asked. And there are elements of this that I still struggle to comprehend. And we'll put this question out there on page 6 of your testimony. There's a paragraph about weather normalization, and the last sentence reads, weather normalization adjustments for the review period decreased the overcollection by $5.6 million as a result of a warmer than normal weather for the 2022-2023 heating season. Can you translate that any better for me to really absorb it?
My understanding of the weather normalization adjustment is that it adjusts how much the company can collect depending on if the weather is warmer than normal or colder than normal. And so that amount then is incorporated into the purchase gas deferred account.
So because it was warmer than normal, there was an adjustment and it was a credit. It decreased the over collection.
Correct.
Which is kind of like a credit. No?
You'll see it on my exhibit 1. You can see it by month. So it's like an under collection, if that's helpful, instead of saying decrease the over collection.
Right. I will ponder it some more, but thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Caston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's get back to weather normalization, which is a component of the PGA, correct?
Yes.
And in essence, what that is, and it's something that I guess the Commission approved some time back, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if, based on whatever standard we're using for average normal temperature. If it's warmer than whatever that is, then the company is allowed a recovery because they didn't sell as much gas because it was warmer in that period. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Would you say that the weather normalization is working as designed?
My review just ensures that the weather normalization adjustment is incorporated into the purchase gas deferred account correctly based on the company's records. I did not analyze the weather normalization adjustment itself as part of my review.
Do you have an opinion? Do you have an opinion whether normalization? Well, I won't ask you that. We'll get to that some other time. Let me ask you. This may be more for you, Mr. Hyatt, but feel free to speak up. And I know you're probably tired of talking about hedging. But as I understand it, and here's what I want to make certain that I understand it, is hedging is simply intended more to hedge a bet, against simply spikes, and to attempt to normalize cost over a longer period of time. Is that
correct? Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
It's neither about getting a cheaper price or a more costly price. It's simply about, an insurance policy, as you said, not to save.
Is to keep prices level. Yeah.
That's all.
Right.
So, hedging versus anything else, whatever's out there, crystal ball, I don't know. Is it the company's responsibility to secure the best fuel cost possible to the best of their ability?
Yeah, as the company's responsibility to keep costs as low as possible. Yes.
Okay, that's a better way to ask it, I guess. It's their responsibility.
Yes.
And at the end of the period, ORS reviews whatever the company's done. You evaluate it, and basically say, yes, we think they were just and reasonable and prudent, or they were not. Is that what ORS does in these type reviews?
Well, in this type of review, we're mainly making sure that they can meet their firm demands and supply gas to their customers.
But when we look at I guess this would be more not this particular hearing, but like a fuel hearing.
Correct, yeah. Or the RSA. I believe, well,
RSA.
We don't have a hearing, but costs are adjusted during RSAs.
No further questions. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, further questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. All right, my fellow commissioners have caused me to come up with some additional questions. And let's talk a little bit more about the weather normalization adjustment. My understanding is exactly what Commissioner Caston said, is when weather is warmer than normal, customers are going to pay more. because the company didn't sell as much gas. And this has been going on for a pretty long time now. I don't know how long weather normalization has been in effect. But for me personally, I would find it interesting to see over that long-term period what's been collected under the weather normalization adjustment every year, or what has been, let's just call it over or under collected. I think in the future, not this time, no late filed exhibit, but I think it would just be interesting to see that number. And you know, you hear so much these days about global warming, temperatures higher and higher. If that's correct, then customers are going to pay more and more under the WNA. Just a thought. And again, I would just throw this out there for the next year's fuel proceeding. I think that would be an interesting number to see from whenever WNA began to the present. And in my opinion, that's something that really the company would have to provide. I don't think that's ORS's responsibility to go back in there and dig that up. But there's some people here from the company, and I think they're hearing what I'm saying. So I'm just tossing that out there.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
And let's switch to the hedging. So two fellow commissioners on either side asked some questions about that. You know, what's been going on, and the approximate 15-year history, and you know, the impact on the annual bill. Again, in my opinion, it would be interesting to see, just on an annual basis, what would the customer's bill have been without the hedging costs in there, and with and without, just an annual basis for the period that this has been in effect. Just interesting information to see. I would just toss that out there again. I think the company's probably listening. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I'll take it back to the office with me.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, further questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Urban?
thank you. And just to follow up on Commissioner Thomas's request, if we're going to do a historic analysis, I'd like to know what customer or ratepayer rates, how they would have been affected had we not had a hedging program in place for the review period, so that we can give have a full view and understanding of how customers have benefited. Because as you said, it's an insurance policy, and like all insurance policies, it's dead cost until you need it. Just like Commissioner Williams said earlier, he was correct to point out that there are unforeseen circumstances, and that's why people obtain insurance. So if we're going to do that kind of historical analysis, let's look at the year when natural gas prices peaked 110% over 12 months. And but for the fact that Piedmont had a hedging program in place, what would have customer bills have been had there not been a hedging program in place? I think that would give us a fair comparison. Thank you for being with us today.
Commissioners, any further questions? Hearing none. Ms. Rainey, any redirect?
No redirect.
No redirect. Thank you.
And that concludes ORS's case.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey. Parties, is there anything further that needs to come before the commission in this proceeding?
Madam Chair, I would just ask for some clarification. Is Commissioner Thomas looking for a late filed
No.
exhibit in this proceeding? Okay,
We're not taking a late filed exhibit on this.
great. Thank you.
Do y'all normally do proposed orders in these proceedings? I'm not sure.
I don't know if we normally do. We certainly are happy to prepare one, or us is at least.
Would y'all get with Ms. Clausen and come up with a date, if you don't
Certainly.
mind, for proposed orders? And if there's nothing further, company, ORS, I'm sorry, witnesses, you can stand down. I apologize. If there's nothing further from either the company or ORS, we will conclude this proceeding and we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your attendance today and for your presentations. We are adjourned.